Hello, my name is Geogen and welcome to a pilot in a new series called Map Strats. This is where I talk about the maps that newer players may not be familiar with and provide some tips on where to go, where the common spots are, and what you have to look out for. So we're going to be starting off with the map Himmelsdorf, and I've got Geogen B, an account of mine, to help me put this video together because I need a training room to talk about where to go. So you can see the map is quite small. It's a 700 meter map, as you can see in the bottom right hand corner. And let's just take a minute to talk about the areas which are most common and where most people go on this map. And we'll do that in a third person camera. Right. So here we are at the South Spawn, otherwise known as the Church Spawn, I suppose, or the Abbey, or whatever you want to call this building. It's a predominant feature of the cap circle in this spawn. Anyway, the map, as you can see, is set in a ruined town, and therefore there's a lot of urban, well, in fact it's all urban. There is no outdoor open areas except this feature in the middle here. Now this feature can be used, but I would recommend against it because it's very, very open and you will be shot at from many different sides. For instance, if you get yourself behind the fountain here, you'll be under fire from the enemy spawn, depending on which way you've spawned, either spawn, the western area where the train is, the train tracks and the trains are. There's gaps here and here between these two buildings. People can also shoot through this building gap as well. There's also a lot of ruined areas where people can shoot from through these windows, and you're going to have to avoid that. Basically, don't go in the middle for too long. Perhaps do a scouting run instead. Now, the main prominent feature of the map is the castle up here on the hill. And at the beginning of a game, depending on what tier you're in, what normally happens is teams spawn from both spawns, of course, so from the south and from the north over there. And the south team, many players will do this. They'll go down along the right hand side, the right valley. It's not even a valley, the right road. And then they'll get to this area here, which is known as Heavy Tank Lane. Or, on the map, it is the 7 line. Now the 7 line is used by heavy tanks because heavy tanks can angle their armor against this piece of rubble here. Tanks such as the E100 and the E75 love to do side-scraping maneuvers. If you don't know what side-scraping is, I'd suggest going to watch a different video, or I may well make a video on that at some point in the future. Anyhow, tanks will then push along here depending on if there's more forces going this way or more forces coming from this way. And then they'll break through, and then they'll either split off to the left or continue down here towards the enemy base, or vice versa. If you're coming from this way, they'll push down here and then either split off down here to the right or towards the enemy base, or up the hill depending if there is a strong enemy presence still there. Now, from the south spawn, there are two ways onto the hill. You can go down this back lane here and go up the gradual slope. As you can see, the slope is gradual until around here, and then you have to go quite quickly, or rather the incline goes up quite quickly, and if you're in a tank with low horsepower per ton, you won't be able to get up the hill very quickly, but light tanks will do just fine. Or alternatively, you can come from this way, where there's a gap in the wall here, and the road leads down to this area, and from the spawn you can see where people can go. Let's talk about the hill. Now the hill, many players will argue, is the key critical area of this map, for several reasons. If you allow enemies to break through from this side, say, they have free reign over two things. One, they'll be able to rush down the hill either on the left path, around the back, or down this slightly shorter route down there towards your base. Likewise, if you allow enemies to push forward like this, they'll go down the hill here, and either down this lane towards the enemy cap circle, or down this lane towards the enemy cap circle. The second objective of taking the hill is the fact that you have free reign over the western and middle sections of the map. From up here you have a very strong position if you want to snipe. Tanks with good guns, good accurate guns, will do very well here indeed, especially if there are light tanks with good view range up here, spotting enemies down below. Many enemies and friendlies will like to sit in these positions here, which are located at the G4, G3 area, and snipe up at the hill if they have vision on enemy targets. Again, like I talked about earlier, people will often shoot through these gaps as well, between these buildings. If you're spawning from this side, a lot of players like to go here to shoot up the hill for the same reasons. Enemy tanks, when they have to go round the castle, they are exposed from a lot of fire down here, and here, if the enemy team has vision on you. It would be safer therefore to go round here, but then you'll have to deal with enemies coming up from this road and from this road. Now, let's talk about the western side of the map, which I haven't done yet. The western side of the map is a train station, or ruined train station, and train tracks litter the area. There's quite a lot of cover to the south, and you'll find that a lot of enemy artillery players like to sit down here. Specifically, they like to sit where this oil transport is, around here. Some enemies, if they're a bit faster, some enemy artillery like to sit right in this corner, so be mindful of those areas. Additionally, enemy artillery like to sit in this area if this western side of the map has been overrun. Similarly, enemy artillery like to sit up here behind the train station, as well as in front, as well as between these two trains. And additionally, some artillery sit in this corner, but it isn't as effective, as there's a lot of buildings in the way. Most artillery sit here, therefore, because they have clear vision down that alleyway and towards the right hand side of the map as well, depending on what tier they're at. Now, enemies will also like to be entrenched behind here, depending if you're firing or being shot at from this position. It's quite strong, especially if they have good turret armor. If they sit behind this ruined building, they'll only be exposing their turret and their gun, and they'll be able to shoot at you all day long. Similarly, like we talked about earlier, this position, people will shoot back at you down there. The light tanks of the map like to go down this area to be able to spot enemy enemies that congregate around here. depending on your camera rating and your view range, you may well be able to spot enemies without being spotted. You may have to break the wall here in order to see through though. So, that's some common areas of where players like to go in the map. Avoid the middle section at all costs unless you are scouting the buildings and hugging the walls here. Depending if it's early game or late game, you may well do well if you're in the late game and you're scouting along here. The early game would be suicide because in a normal match this is a standard arrangement. Enemies will spawn here, and depending if they have good view range, they'll be able to spot you behind the fountain immediately. Let's just take a quick look back over at this area. On encounter, the map will have a cap circle here, and the hill is still fought over, because then it provides the team who wins the hill coverage over the whole eastern side of the map, and then they'll be able to surround their enemies from the left and from the right. And so to end, I've brought up the map that you would see at the bottom right of your screen during a normal game of World of Tanks on the map Himmelsdorf, and I've annotated it with several different coloured dots, and you may be thinking, oh, why have you done that, Geogen? It looks a mess. I'll tell you why. The dots are there to suggest common locations for where enemy vehicles are going to be. This is a summary of what I've been saying in the video. So to begin with, the yellow spots are for likely encounters with enemy vehicles. Can be heavies, can be mediums, can be lights, but the areas in yellow are for where the likely encounters with enemy vehicles are going to be. The hill, heavy tank lane, the western side of the map, and elsewhere. The red zones are likely artillery locations. It's not guaranteed that they're going to be there, but they may well be there as well. Green locations are where light tanks and scouts like to go, generally, from my experience. Your experience may differ, of course. The blue locations, lastly, are where tank destroyers and sneaky tanks like to be as well. You can see on the west there's quite a lot of open space for the tank destroyers to use their good guns at range. The east, not so much, but again, if they get on top of the hill, they'll be able to shoot down at much of the map. I hope you found this of some use. I'll try and refine my ability to talk about the map and techniques on the map in the future episodes. If you did enjoy the video, please consider giving it a like down below, and if you want to subscribe, that would be fantastic too. Would really make my day. Anyhow, as always, I've been Geogen, this has been World of Tanks Map Strats, and I'll see you chaps and chapettes in the next one.